So I am the product owner for Twinkl Phonics. So I kind of look after the various phonics offerings that we have here at Twinkl, and I'm here today to chat about what we have to offer available for the Phonics Screening Check prep. So obviously, a little bit of info. So I've been the product owner and previously worked on the Twinkl Phonics team for about 4 years now. Before that, I was a classroom teacher for 10 years in Key Stage 1, a little bit of early years, a little bit of kindergarten in America as well. So done phonics on the daily for about 10 years, which I really enjoyed. But obviously at this point, I've moved on to creating the phonics and passing on the information to teachers and helping those who teach phonics every day as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. So a bit about the phonics screening check and what we hope to achieve this afternoon. So we're gonna quickly chat about what the phonics screening check is. We're going to have a look at what we can do, how Twinkl Phonics can help you to prepare for it. We'll have a look at what resources we have available, a few top tips, and then at the end we will have an opportunity for you to ask any questions. You can put your questions into the chat, as Emily mentioned earlier, but there will be a little bit of time at the end. I expect to finish a little bit before 5 o'clock, so we have some time. If people do have other questions that you think of, we can have a bit of Q&A time as well. So to kind of kick us off, oh, sorry, I've just left a link in there that I meant to change. Never mind, that's okay. It's fine. Okay, so to kick us off, what is the phonics screening check? So the phonics screening check is it's known as the phonics screening check or screening test. It's a short informal test that's usually taken by Year 1 pupils. It tests them on their ability to read and decode words, a series of 40 words. It typically takes place in the second week of June and is described by the DfE as a short, light touch check. It should take less than 10 minutes to complete. It checks children's ability to decode as well as their recognition of letters and sounds. So it's taken on a one-to-one basis between a pupil and their teacher. And this year it's been confirmed that the date will, the screening check will take place on the week commencing the 10th of June. This information is all taken from the government website. So this has literally just been released a couple of days ago, so we're still kind of digesting it ourselves. No major changes for 2024, but a quick look at the timeline. So the deadline, the next kind of deadlines begin to come along in April and May. So the deadline to order Braille versions of the screening check come around at the end of April 23rd. And then at the end of May, schools will receive their phonics screening check materials. And then those are available on the PAG from the 10th of June. Schools can then administer the check on the 10th of June from the week of the 10th of June to the 14th. Then there's a timetable variation week for pupils who are absent for the screening check from Monday the 17th to Friday the 21st of June. And then the screening check materials and threshold will be published on gov.uk the following Monday, the 24th of June. And then Monday, the 1st of July is the deadline for schools to submit their screening check onto the PAG. And then schools must submit their screening check results to their local authority by the deadline of the 19th of July. So that's kind of the timeline that you're working towards. I have popped a link on there as well, but that information is easy to find on gov.uk. So a little bit about what the screening check is. So the purpose of the phonics screening check is to confirm that all children have learnt phonic decoding to an age-appropriate standard for the end of Year 1. So it encourages schools to pursue a rigorous phonics program to get their children to the standard that's been set out by the government. It's useful to identify children who've not learned to decode using phonics by the end of Year 1. And it's aimed to increase the number of children able to read competently. So the purpose of the screening check is to support you, the teachers, in knowing where your children are and being able to plan what those children will need to, those of them that will need more, to get them to the point where they're reading at an age-appropriate level. So here at Twinkl, obviously, our priority is helping children to learn to read and helping those who teach as well. So this is not something that, you know, this is obviously a government requirement, but we're here, our priority is to help you. And we know that you and your children need to get through the screening check. We hear you and we know that it can be an extra stress in your lives. It can be something that children find difficult. But we know this is something that you need to do. And so we want to be here to try and support you in whatever way we can to try and make it as painless as possible and to get as many children reading, which is our ultimate goal as well as yours. So a little look at what the screening check will actually look like. So the structure of the check, there are some practice words initially for children to look at before the screening check begins, to kind of familiarize children with the activity and provide a few less difficult words to sort of ease them into the screening check. So these words will have the structure of VC or VCC. So there'll only be one vowel consonant or one vowel consonant word. So the practice words will not be scored. They give the children a chance to kind of get warmed up. And then the screening check will be constructed of 20 real words followed by 20 pseudo or nonsense words. The pseudo words will provide the kind of purest assessment of phonic knowledge, because they allow children, whether or not they know the language, whether they recognize any of the words, they'll just be purely decoding and recognizing the sounds that they've learned. So yeah, there's no kind of unintended bias based on the visual memory of some children to recognize words that they know. Sorry, I've got a little bit ahead of my bullet points. So section 1 starts with slightly easier words to kind of get the children started and make the screening check accessible. And it also kind of provides teachers an early check if the children are going to be unable to decode relatively simple words. And then the words at the end of the screening check are around the level of difficulty that we expect children to reach by the end of year 1. So yeah, it gets progressively more difficult to sort of aid the teacher with being able to know, do you know what, this is the point where that child is no longer gaining anything from this. I'm not gaining any more from it. So I'm happy to work up to this point and then stop. And that's okay for teachers to do if you've completed all the assessment that you think is possible for that child at that time. So since this phonics screening check is a decoding check, only words that are phonically decodable have been included. And so on the little image there, you can see words that are pseudo words are marked with the little alien creature to kind of give the children a clue that this is not a word that they'll recognize. And so on a lot of kind of phonics prep materials, you'll see those aliens to give you a clue that some words are real words and some words are pseudo words. So an example kind of look at what the section the check can include. Section 1 will include words using these GPC correspondences. So inclusion of a particular grapheme will not necessarily be in proportion to its frequency in words that are appropriate for children at the end of year 1. So for example, the letter T won't appear more frequently than the letter X, even though it's more common. So the assessment framework also explains how words will be made up of consonants and vowels and the level of difficulty of the words. If you'd like to know more, there is more in the government guidance. But yeah, for example, so the children will see these short words, they'll sound those out and decode them, and each one will check their knowledge and recognition of the different GPCs. So then section 2 starts to get into more difficult words where they encounter grapheme phoning correspondences that they would have learned further on through their into phase 4, phase 5. So some of the digraphs and alternative pronunciations. And so yeah, you'll see these more complex graphemes in section 2. So how can Twinkl help you? So we have, if you've been using Twinkl Phonics, if you've been using Twinkl for your phonics resources, you might know that there are a lot of phonics resources on site. Some of the first resources that were ever put on Twinkl were phonics resources, but actually there are 2 quite distinct different types of resources on Twinkl. So our classic phonics are resources that don't form a complete phonics scheme. They're resources to support phonics teaching from phases 1 to 6, and they're resources that can be used in a range of settings to complement and enhance your existing phonics planning. So those are the resources we know as classic resources. Then we also have our Twinkl Phonics, which is our DFE approved systematic synthetic phonics scheme, our complete program. So it includes complete learning overviews, weekly planning, daily lesson packs, PowerPoints, activities and mini books, full assessment schedules and packs, interventions, and a complete range of supporting resources as well. So you can kind of spot You can spot the classic resources because those talk about phases. It doesn't include all of the planning and structure of an SSP. And Twinkl Phonics scheme itself is a complete SSP, DFE approved. And so we also refer to the phases as levels, and those are slightly different to what the phases are from the original letters and sounds, but it's built on a similar structure. So once you kind of know that those two slightly different products, that will help you to understand the resources that you're looking for. I put myself a little pin in here because I think it's important to mention this. So something about Twinkl Phonics is that in our phonics program, we don't actually include any teaching of pseudo words because we feel that the most effective phonics teaching includes using real world examples, real words, and so that is all the children will encounter in the actual phonics program lessons. But we know that it is useful for some children to have exposure and practice of pseudo words. So we have created separate resources to cover the use of pseudo words and practice specifically for the phonics screening check. But something that we like to remind teachers of is that when it comes to pseudo words are words that don't have a meaning currently in English, but Twinkl does its best to provide phonically regular nonsense words that are not currently in use as slang or colloquial words, but it sometimes happens that the words that are used as nonsense words come to mean other things because people adopt them as slang words. So we do just encourage you to check all of the words that are in your nonsense words resources and make sure that there's nothing that you feel could take on a different meaning, and if necessary, change it. Our resources are generally editable, so if you feel, we sometimes get someone say, oh, this word, we've heard this on the playground and we think it's a rude word, well, feel free to change it. That's something that unfortunately the playground will do, and so yeah, we try to make sure that we try to track that, but it's something that we remind teachers to keep an eye on. Right, so if you're looking for phonics screening resources, you'll want to start at twinkl.co.uk/phonics. So from here, you'll find all of our core lesson packs and planning at the very top of the page. And then when you scroll to the bottom half of the page, you will find our additional supporting resources. So what we've done is we've sorted all of our phonics screening check into level 5. And on the left, you'll see there's a tick box that says phonics screening check. Now, that doesn't mean that all of our phonics screening check prep resources are level 5 or phase 5. We have phonics screening check resources for phase 2, 3, 4, and 5, but we've sorted them into level 5 because that's typically where you would be teaching level 1 children. So that's where we figure you'd be expecting to find those resources. Complete coverage of all of the GPCs needed for the phonics screening check will be taught by level 5, week 21, if you're following the Twinkl Phonics program. So wherever you are with your teaching, so long as you've gone past week 21, which kind of in a calendar tends to come up around or shortly after the Easter holidays. So you should have plenty of time to complete all of that learning that will need to be covered by the phonics screening check. So then if you do feel that your children need any extra before the time comes, there's plenty of time to work that planning into your lessons as well. So we'll have a little bit of a look at what the resources are that we have. So we have some guidance for teachers and guidance for parents, first of all. So the teacher guidance includes lots about the structure of the screening check itself, guidance on the types of words that you'll find used, some advice on how to administer the check, lots of ways that you can adapt the check for specific learners. There's lots of allowance in the government rules to adapt the check if your children have certain needs, and you'll find that in the teacher guidance, some guidance on how to do that, and also guidance on how to score and record and report those results. We've also got a separate guide for parents and carers, which kind of gives them just a very basic overview of what the screening check is, what will happen, what it'll be like for their children, to help kind of prepare them if they want to help the child, if they want to support in any way. And we've prepared a PowerPoint as well. So if it's something that you wanted to get children, to get parents in to kind of present or show them, whether it's in a parent meeting or separately in one-to-one meetings where you can present, we kind of gave you a template to kind of use for that. So sorry, I can see one or two questions coming up in the question box. I can come to those when we get slightly towards the end, but there will be, I did notice that one, there will be all the links should be included in the reflections document that you'll be sent after we finish the webinar. So some of the resources that you might find useful, obviously, as you get closer to the screening check, assessment's going to be really, really important so that you know what to expect from your children, so that you know where they are in relation to what they'll be expected to do. So our assessment packs, action plans and trackers are going to be really key resources for you. So we have assessment pack for every level of Twinkl Phonics. So when you complete level 2, 3 and 4, there's an assessment pack for the end of each of those. And then in level 5, there are 3 assessment packs, one after each 10 weeks. So you kind of have those roughly half-term to termly touch points where you can just assess and see that your children are on track and find where those gaps are that need to be addressed. There's also a whole scheme assessment, which can be quite a useful tool to give you kind of a snapshot. It might be that a child comes to you later on in the year. It might be that a child, you feel that the assessment picture that you have on them doesn't tell the whole story, or it might be that you've got children in year 2 that are retaking, and so you just want to get an overall assessment. We have a whole scheme assessment that kind of is a slimmed down version to give you a quick glance of where that child is working. And then we have an action plan template and a phonics action plan for the lowest 20%. So yeah, those documents can be found on site as well, and an intervention tracker, which kind of gives you guidance as to where those children are, where you could expect them to be, and points you in the direction of what interventions might be helpful for them. So once you've done a little bit of assessment and you've kind of started to plan which children might need what sort of intervention and what support, there's a number of resources you can find on site to help you with that. So as I mentioned, yeah, the screening check will be constructed of 20 real words followed by 20 pseudo words. And as I said, we don't embed any alien word or pseudo word teaching in the program. So if you do want to practice that, if you feel your children would benefit from it, we do recommend that you go and find these additional resources. So yeah, we have provided a whole wealth of those kinds of things. So they do actually link to the main scheme if you're following the Twinkl Phonics. The children Kit and Sam make friends with an alien early on in their level 5 stories, and the alien's name is Jay. And then when it comes to doing your phonics screening check, they get to spend a bit more time with Jay, and he introduces them to some of his alien friends. So it does kind of tie in if you're following the scheme as well. And so they add a little bit of real world context to the children that have been learning on Twinkl Phonics. So you can add those to your lessons as and when you feel like the children need that. So some of those resources include alien and real word PowerPoints, flashcards. It might be something that you want to do a little bit of practice, kind of lining up for lunch, just whip through some of those words. Perhaps they're sitting on the carpet ready for end of the day, or ready for their story time, or collecting their book bags, quick to whip through the cards. Your PowerPoint could be something that goes on while they're tidying up, or at the end of the day in a bit of quiet time. So opportunities to kind of fit a little bit of that practice in between when you find a moment. The flashcards have been created in a similar style and format to the check, which is a deliberate choice on our part, so that when the children kind of get closer to the phonics screening, these things kind of seem familiar. There's not a big sort of feeling of, oh, this is new, this is different, this is, it helps the children to feel more comfortable when the time comes for the check. So we've tried to make that kind of integrated as you go through our practice materials, that they start to be more familiar with it. We find that the flashcards are perfect for small groups, and then the PowerPoints might be more useful for your whole class or for a large group. And then we've got various group games for further practice, which we'll have a look at in just a moment. So we have some display resources as well. So in that section on the website, you'll find an interactive display pack for each level. So levels 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it contains real and alien words that the children could read and sort. So you could have a display where the children just sort the words into real or alien, and then perhaps jumble them up at the end of the day, or obviously have a child jumble them up for you as a job. So just little activities for them to recognize those real words and alien words, which can be helpful as they approach the check, just to be able to distinguish which ones are real words and which ones are the pseudo words. Just gives you a little bit of daily practice and just daily exposure to that reading practice. There is adult guidance with these as well, to give you some ideas and tips of how you could use them, to kind of get you started. Then we've got other activity packs. So these are independent activity packs. So you might want to send a small group of children to go and work on some practice. It might be that as part of a carousel or part of your English lesson. So various kind of close activities, matching activities, practice with reading, blending, segmenting. So yeah, just various different contexts for them to practice those skills that they'll use when the screening check comes around. So as well as the independent practice activities to work on in class, we've also got home learning activities for every level as well. So these could support home learning in the build up to the screening check. You could send activities home for children to work on with parents and carers as you think is appropriate. So some examples that you can see here. So we've got things like find the planets, 4 in a row, alien word snap, or real and alien word snap, home learning word list, make the alien words, phonics activity mats, reading color, roll and write, those kinds of activities to give them lots of different and hopefully engaging and interesting ways to practice that's not just repeatedly reading words. So then we have our Go games. So if you've used Twinkl Go before, these are our interactive resources. Obviously, if you haven't, definitely worth checking out. So while you're logged into Twinkl, you can launch Go games and practice those, and children can they can be assigned to children to practice at home, even if they don't have a Twinkl account. So you can set them up with various games and different kind of resources that are interactive. And the children can use to practice. So this one's a bingo game. So you click launch and it basically launches on the screen, and the children can play a game of bingo. It's all very interactive. So it's paperless. It's all online. It just takes place through the browser or through a device. They can do it in the classroom, or they can do it remotely through using the planner tool that you can assign it at home. It's iPad friendly, tablet friendly, smartphone friendly. It doesn't need to be downloaded, so it's really, really easy and quick for children to set that practice. So then we've got some group games. So this might be something that you assign a small group with an adult. So perhaps a targeted intervention group could practice these things like bingo, word sorting, board games, bingo lotto, those kinds of things. So just more ways for children to get that blending and segmenting practice. And again, it kind of exposes them to the alien or pseudo words if we haven't been including them in your day-to-day teaching. And then also you might identify some children for whom the practice and intervention kind of needs to take on different multisensory forms. So children obviously love learning in a variety of ways, and Twinkl Phonics includes physically active phonics activities to ensure that all children can stay engaged, enthused and focused on their learning. So throughout our phonics program, you'll find these physically active phonics activities. There's always this icon to look out for with Kit, Sam and Ben kind of running, and that shows you that there's a physically active version for that activity within the lesson. So it might be that some of these activities would be the ideal way for certain children, the children in your class. There might be some for whom doing that extra practice, doing that kind of prep for the screening check, the best way to get them doing that is up and about, using their kinesthetic kind of learning skills, and so we've provided lots of those. You can find those throughout the levels on site. So yeah, throughout the levels, I say they're actually from levels 2 to 6. They're not level 1 itself is quite naturally active if you're using that at all with some of your children still, but for levels 2 to 6 you can find physically active phonics lessons. So overall, our interventions that might be useful, I've just kind of summarized these on the page. So we have 3 main kind of interventions for Key Stage 1. So we've got Explorosaurus, which essentially Explorosaurus is for children who still need to kind of use their level 1 multisensory type skills. They might have started year R with none of that skills with no nursery background. They might just have been slower developing, and so those pre-phonics skills are still kind of something that they're working on. So Explorosaurus is a complete intervention program to teach the level 2 GPCs through really active continuous type provision. So for some of your children, even once they're in year 1, that might be the most appropriate way for them to review and learn those level 2 sounds. So yeah, look out for Explorosaurus resources within the level 2 lesson packs. Then we have group interventions. So these interventions are kind of designed as kind of a catch-up style intervention. If you've got groups of children who have kind of similar gaps or perhaps are working at a similar level, and you want them just to kind of fill in some gaps that they've missed in their learning, the group interventions are designed for that. Those are scripted, kind of completely self-explanatory planning. You can find those on site. You might have a group of children working on similar GPCs to kind of get them ready and practiced. And then we also have our one-to-one same-day intervention. So that's more of a kind of keep-up type intervention. So it might be that you've identified 1 or 2 pupils who you know will be able to stay kind of up with the class with that little bit of extra support. It might be that they struggle with sitting on the carpet. It might just be that their style of learning requires a little bit of extra, and you've got that adult time to dedicate. Perfect. We've got fully planned and scripted intervention resources that you can use with those children to kind of give them that little top up. So all of these resources can be found on the bottom half of our site in the additional resources under interventions, Key Stage 1 interventions. So finally, something that you might want to do is you might want to do mock phonics screening checks. This is something that obviously is going to be something that you judge whether or not you want to do this with your class, if you think that it will be beneficial. We know that these are, these children are small. The last thing you want is to be putting them through assessment after assessment after assessment. But if you feel in your judgment that what will benefit them most and get the best out of them is to have a little exposure to this, a little bit of practice, so that it's something that's not strange and unfamiliar on the day, we have provided some kind of mock phonics screening material. So if you wanted to do a practice, if you think that would be beneficial, there are some complete packs that include everything you need to do that. So it's got kind of an answer sheet that looks a lot like the screening check answer sheet. The materials look very similar, so it will kind of feel, it kind of make them familiar with what that will feel like on the day, just to kind of give them that extra bit of practice if you think that's something that they'll benefit from. So a few top tips from our team, just from our various experience. We've got about 200 years of combined experience in the phonics team alone. So lots of phonics screening checks completed in our time. So yeah, from chatting to the team, we felt that some of the important things you can do are to think strategically about how you organize the day. So there's really a lot of flexibility to fit it into the whole week, and obviously depending on the size and scope of your setting and what staff you have available, it might be that you do certain children you think would do it really well first thing in the morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, get them in, get it done, move them on. It might be that you think you want the children who will need a little bit more time, who might be a little bit slower and more careful in the morning. That's something that you know your children best. We can't possibly be experts on your children. We provide the toolkit. You're the one that knows them. You're the expert. And, just it's use your flexibility. Use the flexibility that is allowed within that week to make it as comfortable as you can for yourself and for your children. Also think about times of the day in terms of, are they going to be hungry? Are they going to be thirsty? Does that child perform best when they've just eaten? Or are they the sort of child that eats and then gets really tired and droopy? You know your children. So yeah, just think strategically about the best way to fit them in around the day. This is a really important one. So children are allowed to use sound buttons on the check. Sound buttons are one of my passions in life. They're such a great way of helping children, support them with their phonics. And they are allowed to use them in the check. So if you've really trained them that if a word is tricky, if a word is unfamiliar, if there's a GPC that you know that they find hard, that maybe the PH is tricky for them to remember, maybe the AI vowel digraph is tricky for them, if you've trained them to spot that, sound button it, and help them to read it, they are totally allowed to do that in the check. That is something that is encouraged. So yeah, if you feel that it will benefit them, you can start training them on that now. When they see words, obviously within the boundaries, you might not want them to be putting sound buttons in every book they pick up and read, but that is something that you could teach, train, and encourage them to do if that's a way to help support. So that is something that the children would have to do themselves. The adult can't sound button for them, but the child is able to do, if you've trained them and you've shown them how to do that, they can sound button themselves in the phonics screening check. So yeah, and that kind of leads on to the other tip that we kind of had, which was that you are able to make modifications to make the check more accessible. Now, the gov.uk page is the best place to kind of get the real detail about that, because it kind of varies from child to child. There are some provisions that you're allowed to make for certain children, depending on what the needs of those children are. Children that have visual impairments or auditory processing impairments, you can modify the test to make it more accessible for that child. So do have a look at the government guidance. Again, as you will be doing at this point in the year, you'll be there knowing your children really, really well, knowing the best ways to support them. This is where, again, if you do find time and you feel that it's beneficial to do some of those mock screening checks, it might just be some of them need it, but it might be that some you think that will give you a little bit more of an idea of how that child might be best supported in the check. If you've done a few mock screening checks and you spotted that this certain child, you know that they're good at blending, you know that they've got that skill, but they're struggling with it for some reason, you might be able to identify a barrier with how they can see it on the page, and there's a provision for that within the government guidance to kind of make the screening work better for them. So yeah, I do encourage you to look through that and make those adjustments to suit your children the way that they need it. Right, so that's kind of all the information from me. What I've got here for you is various different places that we can support you if you do have questions, and obviously I'll stay on the call for a little while after as well, because I know there've been one or two in the comments, which I'll come to in just a moment. But we are here. We have our Twinkl Cares team 24/7. They man the chat. If you've got questions, do get in touch. If there's anything that I've kind of mentioned today that you want to know more about, if you've got anything that you'd like to suggest or request, that can go through Cares. I won't be here 24/7. I can't be on the end of everyone, but if there's something that needs my expertise or the expertise of my team, Twinkl Cares will pass that on to us, and we will look into it at first opportunity. So do get in touch with Twinkl Cares. They're absolutely fabulous. You can also get in touch with our training team, phonics.training@twinkl.co.uk. We have our team of trainers, and they're always on hand to answer your questions or pass those on to the team. So do use these ways to get in touch with us. We're more than happy to help in any way that we can.